All right, all right, all right. We're back here at Song of the Day, coming to you from the Rock Pond. That's right. This place is called Rock Pond. Let's take a look. Do a little 360 here. One of the camps. All right. Pretty cool spot, eh? Let's get this going. All right. We are here on Friday. What is today? Can you hear me now? Today is Octane Friday. That's right. Whew. What do we got going on today? Well, I'm your host, Mark Pierce, as usual, and yes, indeed, we are at a place called Rock Pond. Perfect place to be on Octane Friday. We're the Rock Cave. We're at Rock Pond. We're slinging up rock and roll. And it's Octane Friday. I don't know, it's going to be a good one. But let's go back. Let's check this date in history on the music news. We're pretty short today. We got 1982 climbing up the charts to number 2 is the supergroup Asia and their debut album. 1999 in the Hartford area, famous Dave Matthews Band, riots, violence, arrests, 55 arrests at the Meadows Music Theater. If you were there, comment below. That was a big deal, made national news. Birthdays today. B.J. Thomas is 78. Remember that song, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head? I remember that as a kid. Also appropriate for Octane Friday, Bruce Dickinson is 62 today, singer for Iron Maiden. Could have done several songs from them today, but we're not. And I kind of gave a little hint earlier in the week that what we're doing today, and you might be able to tell by my shirt, designed this logo myself, with a little help from this band. Shh, don't tell them. Anyway, this is a big Metallica week, this past week and next week in history. You got, well, birthday, James Hetfield turned 57 on the 3rd. On the same date in 1991, Metallica held their release party for their huge album, affectionately called the Black Album. And then it was released next week on this date, on the 12th of August. So, clearly we're doing Metallica on Octane Friday, and we're taking something from the anniversary of the Black Album. Let's go back in history just a little bit more, just for a little bit of context. The late 80s, we were talking about this last night when we were hanging out listening to music. Late 80s, a dearth of creativity for music. If you weren't listening to classic rock and roll, or you were listening to hair bands, Poison, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what you were still listening to in the late 80s. So it was either that, or you were listening to pop, which was stuff that doesn't necessarily stick around to this day, but I did appreciate it, and I still do. But if you were listening to things, you were listening to things like CNC Music Factory, that kind of stuff, right? So, then later, it's grunge that comes in. So there's this little spot in music where it's kind of not a lot going on, right? I, myself, was not listening to Metallica, but I got into my metal phase around 1990 when I started listening to Queensryche, and I started getting into stuff like that. I was big into Queensryche, as I've said in the past. That got me into some Megadeth and some heavier stuff, but I wasn't yet listening to the early Metallica albums. So, technical difficulty here. So, what is this album all about? Think about it. It's their 5th album. They were going to call it 5. Metallica, they're a popular band, but they're not in the mainstream. Clearly, this is their most accessible album. This album generated 5 singles. Critics loved it. It debuted at number 1 in 10 countries. I remember when I was working at the record store, it was just a really big deal. This was flying out the doors. Metallica was selling to people that would not listen to Metallica before that. Die-hard Metallica fans were pissed. They didn't like this album. They thought they had sold out. True story. And I guess in some ways you could say they did, but this is an awesome album. I don't care what you have to say, it is awesome. It was #1 in the US for 4 weeks straight, sold 16 million copies. This thing was all over the place. All right, produced by a guy named Bob Rock. How about that? The producer's Bob Rock. We're the Rock Cave. We're at Rock Pond. We're slinging up rock. See the theme here? This guy had produced Dr. Feelgood album from Motley Crue, so they hired this guy. Never worked with him before, and the story is that it was real rough going. This guy wanted multiple takes. They wanted to change their musical direction a little bit. He wanted them to do some things differently. They're very particular about their music. It was not a pretty sight. Lots of arguments, lots of fighting. This guy said he would never work with them again, and he ended up working with them through St. Anger in 2003. But 1,500 fans signed a petition to get him to stop being their producer because they didn't like the type of music that they were generating at that time. But it was very popular, right? Also at this time, 3 of them were going through divorces to add to the difficulty of the recording process of this album. This album cost a lot to make. It was $1 million to make. Obviously, it made back all of its money and more. As far as this album comes out, they are touring based on this album. They're doing some huge shows. They do the Monsters of Rock concert in Moscow, a free concert, right? To this day, there's arguments over how many people attended this concert. Some people say 150,000. Some people say 500,000. Other people say 1.6 million. See, the arguing about crowd size is not a new thing. It's been going on for a while now. Anyway, so the album itself. What are the songs we're talking about here? Enter Sandman, obviously huge. I mean, come on, great song. Sad But True. So, Enter Sandman went to number 16. I expected to go a little higher than that. Sad But True. Guess what? Only number 98. I love this song. Holier Than Thou. The Unforgiven was top 40. Great song. Wherever I May Roam. Don't Tread on Me. Number 21. Through the Never. That was one of my favorite songs too. I think I rotated favorite songs from this album. Nothing Else Matters. Obviously, power ballad. Everyone knows that song. Of Wolf and Man. The God That Failed. My Friend of Misery and The Struggle Within. What a record. I mean, so many people love this record, and it is hard to pick a favorite from this album because it's so good, like I said. But if you're going to ask me, Mark, what's the song you played the most? By far, there's one and only song that makes sense to me, because it's the song that I absolutely have played the most, and that is Sad But True. Sad But True is absolutely my favorite song on this record. Some of you are going to argue with me, and you're going to tell me what your favorite is, and I'll say, yeah, that's fair. But this is the one I listened to the most. I could not believe it only went to number 98. But this is a great song. I want to hear you talk about Metallica today. I want to hear what you think about this record, what you remember about this record. Once I heard this, I started going back and listening to a lot of their old stuff. I had heard one, because I saw the video on, of all things, Friday Night Videos, or it was probably not Friday Night Videos. What was the Headbangers Ball? I probably saw it on Headbangers Ball on MTV. I had a cassette recording of it, but that was my only other exposure to Metallica, and then I went back and started listening to all their other stuff and loved it. So we're at about 8.5 minutes. That's respectable for Metallica. Look at this weather. We're going to go enjoy it now while we can, but I expect you to take your Metallica out today, turn it up to 11, and tell me what your favorite song from that record is, because it's a good one. Sad But True. Turn this one way up. We're going to do the same. Enjoy your day, and as usual, we'll see you on the flip side.